Please stand by. We're about to begin. Good day and welcome to the Strikeforce Rockhold versus Kennedy conference call. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, for opening remarks and introductions, I would like to turn the conference over to Mr. Ryan Grab. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. As a reminder, Strikeforce Rockhold versus Kennedy is live on Showtime at 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific with a tape play on the West Coast on Saturday, July 14th from the Rose Garden Arena in Portland, Oregon. Additionally, Showtime Extreme will air 4 preliminary matchups beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, also the tape play on the West Coast. Today on the call, we're joined by the current Strikeforce middleweight champion, Luke Rockhold, as well as his opponent, number one contender, Tim Kennedy. Additionally, we're joined by Tyron Woodley and Nate Marquardt, who will meet in a 5-round bout for the vacant welterweight title. This time, I would like to turn the call over to Strikeforce CEO, Scott Coker. Scott?
Thanks, Ryan. I'd like to thank the media for attending today's conference call, as well as thank Showtime Television, our broadcast partner. Also, I'd like to thank Muscle Farm for being Strikeforce's official sponsor for 2012. I'm excited to be back at the Rose Garden in Portland with another amazing Strikeforce show. This is going to be another card stacked top to bottom. As you know, we have the 2 big world title fights that Ryan mentioned earlier on the card, but I'd like to just read you some of the names on the fight card. We have Rockhold, Kennedy, Woodley, Marquardt, Gracie, Jardine, Lawler, Larkin, Couture, Hirato, Healy, Wilcox, Masvidal, and we even have a couple undercard fights before that. It's going to be an amazing night of fights. Tickets are still available at the Rose Garden box office, and you can tune into Showtime to catch this amazing event. It's going to be one of the best fight cards of the year for Strikeforce, and I urge everybody to come to Rose Garden or tune into Showtime to check it out. At this time, let's open it up for questions.
Thank you. If you'd like to ask a question, please signal by pressing the star key followed by the digit 1 on your telephone keypad. If you're using a speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. Once again, that's star 1 to ask a question, and we'll pause for just a moment to allow everyone an opportunity to signal for questions. And we'll start with Matt Bishop from the Detroit News. You're on.
I have a question for Nate Marquardt. Nate, what have you been doing to make sure that you've stayed sharp during your time off from fighting here?
Yeah, basically, one of the biggest things is I thought I had about 3 fights throughout this last year, and so I actually had training camps, and that's the best way to stay sharp. I said that's the best way to stay sharp is to train for a fight, and you know, I'm just very motivated and driven person, and so I didn't find it a problem.
All right, thanks.
Next, we go to John Morgan, MMAJunkie.com.
Thank you. Nate, if I could follow up with you too, obviously getting down to 170, can you talk to us about that process and kind of what you've been doing? Is it, you know, are you going to be coming in a smaller guy, or is it a situation where you're just looking to cut harder, you know, right before the fight?
You know, it's funny because everyone always thought I was a big middleweight, but actually weight-wise, I was one of the smaller middleweights, and I found it fairly easy to fight at 170. You know, I was trying to keep muscle mass on to fight at 85, and now I just train, the weight comes off, and it's not a problem.
And obviously, I mean, you've got a pretty storied career, Nate. You faced a lot of top fighters. Looking at Tyron, how would you stack his wrestling up to guys that you faced in the past, and does he compare to anybody that you faced in the past?
You know, that's a question I can't really answer till I get in there and I feel how his wrestling is. Obviously, you know, he's done very well in his career. He's undefeated. He beat his last 3 opponents were tough guys, and he pulled off wins against them. And you know, it's one of those things. I think he's a tough guy, but I also believe in my skills, and I have awesome training partners, and you know, I really believe in my skills. So.
Great, thank you, Nate. And if I could ask you, Tyron, obviously, you know, Nate is the most experienced opponent you face. He's fought, you know, all over the world. You've kind of taken some criticism lately for your wrestling and you know, maybe fighting to a decision, but that would seem to be your big strength in this fight. What's more important to you? I mean, to rely on that wrestling, your strength, and to get the win, or to put on a show and maybe address some of the critics who've been, you know, kind of questioning your fighting style?
Well, my goal is obviously to exploit weaknesses and to find gaps and openings. Anytime, my opponent has a weakness, I found a way to figure it out. Even if I don't find it the first or second round, I was always find a way to exploit that. So, if you look at my record, within 10 fights, 6 of my fights are finishes. So, it's not that you don't try to finish. It's not like you make a decision, okay, I'm going to let this fight go to the 3 rounds. Some guys just don't want to be put away. I don't want to be put away. So, you just got to find a way to continue to, go for the victory, try to get dominant positions, try to do damage. And, at the end of the day, it's all about, imposing your will on your opponent.
And Tyron, looking back at the guys you have fought, do you think Nate compares to anybody that you fought, or can you kind of reference anybody that you've beat in the past and putting together this game plan, or is this something totally new for you?
Nate just kind of brings different components to the game, So some of the things he do, I can pick from different opponents that might have done something similar, but it's just all in all, every fighter is different. Everybody has a different skill set they bring to the table, and they're just really not overly focusing on what they do best, but really giving it credit, respecting it, but also not fearing it, and just being ready to put your game out there and make sure yours overwhelms theirs. So that's my game plan. I think that he brings a ton to the table. He's a well-rounded fighter. I think he's good at all areas, but at the end of the day, it's my time to be champion, and that's what I'm going for.
All right, thank you both, gentlemen.
And our next question comes from Mike Chiappetta of SB Nation.
I'll start with Tyron, please. Kind of following up on the question that John asked about the criticism. I know that athletes are often their own worst critics. I mean, you guys watch your own performances, and you know better than anyone what you did and didn't do right or wrong. So, Tyron, I was wondering, any of that criticism that you've gotten over the last couple of fights, do you think any of it has been warranted, or do you think it's been mostly misplaced, just frustration that, the fight hasn't been finished for whatever reason?
Most of the critics are coming from spectators. Critics aren't coming from my trainers. Critics aren't coming from my training partners or people I sparred with or trained with in the past. So I got to really take it, with a grain of salt that these people are spectators. Sometimes we get confused on whether we watch the mixed martial arts or we watch the kickboxing or if we watch the taekwondo. A lot of the criticism has been really, it sounds as if they're criticizing my ability to take down opponents at will, control situation, and basically neutralize everything they bring to the table. So if that's a knock on me, maybe I'm not in the right sport. I thought it was mixed martial arts. So for me, it's just focusing on getting the most Tyron Woodley out in the cage. So my criticism goes to myself, basically making sure that every fight I can get a little bit more out, get a little bit more out. And when it's all said and done, when every tool that I possess, everything that I have as a skill is put out there in the cage, I'm a dangerous fighter for anybody to face. And that's my focus now, not so much on what the critics say, more so on why I fight, my family, the things I believe in, my focus, everything that drives me in fighting. That's the things that motivate me in training. Those are the reasons why I want to get the most out of myself in the cage.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, Nate is the most he's the most well known. He's the opponent who's kind of has the best resume, I would say, of anyone you've faced. Because of that, is he kind of the guy that kind of opponent that you can make a statement against in a way of proving the critics and people wrong?
Well, once again, my goal is not really to prove the critics wrong, because the same critics at one point in time said I was the best athlete in the sport. They said I was a rising star. They said I was the next thing, and at the welterweight, I was the one to look out for. And with the decision win, by the way, not a loss, those same critics will say, okay, this guy's laying and praying. He's doing whatever he's born. But 2 fights ago when I was finishing with an armbar or knocking someone out, they had a different opinion. So to me, once again, I just have to focus on my goals. Obviously, a victory against Nate Marquardt would be amazing for me. He's a big name. He's fought in the top guys. He had a chance at the middleweight belt. And I just think that, this is a guy that's still in his prime. I'm not knocking off an old dusted-up veteran that's out of his prime, that's on his way out of his career. I'm fighting a guy that's trying to redirect his career. He's going to another weight. He's trying to, basically get a different, fresh breath of wind. And he's going to meet me at my best. I'm going to meet him at his best. And those victories mean a little bit more to me than, taking out a guy that's, on his way out.
Cool, thank you. And I just have a couple questions for Tim Kennedy, please. Tim, now that you're healed up and ready to go, can you tell us what the injury was that knocked you out of the Rockhold fight the first time it was offered to you? Because I'm not sure that ever was released. Is Tim still there?
Mr. Kennedy, is your phone on mute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
So I was sparring, my left toe slipped in between a space in the mats, and I threw a hard left hook, and my toe stayed in the tiny little space, and my foot continued to move. So pretty much tore off my left toe, and had to go and get surgery to get put back on, and now my toe is a good looking toe.
Ooh. Is it your big toe?
Yeah, it was a big toe on my left foot.
Wow. How was the recovery for that? Just kind of had to stay off your feet for a while, or anything more elaborate?
No, I took 3 weeks off of like no weight bearing on it. You know, like I couldn't do any strength and conditioning, and I couldn't do any sprints, no sparring, no grappling, and then I eased into strength and conditioning and hitting mitts and wrestling shoes, and then about 6 weeks later, I was able to start training again, and now it's 100% healthy.
And by the time that you guys actually step into the cage, it's going to be almost a year between fights for you. Any concerns about that? Just the time. Ring rust comes up from time to time with guys, and any concerns about that, and just how excited are you to get back in there finally?
I'm super excited to fight. Especially for the title, especially another very talented athlete. And I've had a lot of breaks, long breaks, some longer than others in my career. Whether I was deployed or just waiting on another fight like this instance. It's fighting. Sometimes you get a lot of fights, sometimes you get few. So I'm just excited that I have one right now.
Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate the time.
Again, if you'd like to ask a question today, please press *1. And our next question comes from Matt Manzella of CageReligion.com.
Good afternoon, guys. Thanks for taking the time. Luke, this one's for you. Going into this fight, there really seems to be a good deal of mutual respect between yourself and Tim. Is it all a bit more challenging getting prepared for a guy you genuinely seem to like?
Not at all. I'm a fighter. I'm a professional, and it poses a lot of problems. And I want to keep my belt, so I'm going to do everything I can to do that. And I feel very confident in my skills, and I'm going to bring it to the table, and I'm going to protect what's mine.
And a quick one for Nate. Nate, you've been away from Zuffa for a bit over a year, and at the time it seemed like the company was quite upset, but now you're getting an immediate title shot in Strikeforce. Talk a bit about how that feels, knowing that Zuffa has kind of, restored its faith in you.
It's huge for me. It's a huge fight to have coming back, and man, I'm just really excited about it, and I feel very blessed. That's it.
All right, thanks so much for the time, guys.
Up next, we have Damon Martin of MMAweekly.com.
First question is for Nate. Nate, he just kind of alluded to this. The last year has been pretty crazy for you. You signed the deal with Bama, never actually got to fight with them, and then obviously coming back to Strikeforce. I mean, how tumultuous was this last year for you? I mean, was there dealing with a lot of emotion over this last year, just waiting to fight, just waiting to be able to get back in there and do it again?
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, it hasn't been easy. It's definitely tested me, and I believe God's been testing me, and I just really feel grateful at this point, and it's been a rough road, but I feel like I've overcome the challenges, and I'm just excited to have this fight. I'm excited to get back in there. I feel like I'm a kid again with one of my first fights, so it's exciting.
I know you mentioned in another interview that you've stopped the TRT treatments that you were on before. I know that was obviously we've heard all the stories about how that affected your emotions, all the different things that did for you. I mean, how are you feeling going into this now that you're off that and you're getting ready for obviously your title fight? I mean, feeling healthy? Is it feeling any different? How are you feeling?
It's one of those things. It's been challenging. I've had to find a lot of ways to combat it, and I've had to change my training schedule. But bottom line is that I'm training hard. I feel great, and I've felt like this before in training and done awesome. So it's one of those things that I want to really just move past that point in my life. I mean, I'm so sick of answering TRT questions, to be honest. You'd think the media would want to talk about something new anyway. It's like kind of old news, but I got a title fight coming up, and I feel great, and that's the bottom line.
With that said, you mentioned obviously dropping down to welterweight over this last year. You were gonna fight at welterweight before when the fight didn't come together in England. So has your weight stayed down this entire time? Like, have you been able to keep your weight down this entire time? Adjusting your body, because I know when you were cutting weight in Pittsburgh, obviously you got your weight down pretty low. I mean, has that been a constant over the last year, or did you have to bulk back up and then drop back down? Like, how did that work as you had this time off?
No, man, it's been easy. Like I said before. When I used to fight at middleweight, I was never a big middleweight, weight-wise. My frame is fairly big, but my weight has always been, I've fought under 200. I've never been over 200 in my fights. And, most of the guys in middleweight are over 200. And so I feel great cutting down for 170.
Awesome. And one question for Luke Rockhold. Luke, I know your last fight, you were honest about the fact that, you weren't all that excited about facing a guy like Keith Jardine. We know Keith is a great fighter, but, as far as earning title shots and things like this, I mean, does the fight with a guy like Tim Kennedy get you more excited for the fight just because he is a guy who's kind of earned the shot and been around Strikeforce? I mean, does this make you more excited for a fight like this than maybe your last one?
Yeah. No, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It's definitely, I want those guys. I want the guys that have earned their spot, and Tim Kennedy's definitely that guy. He's proven he's the number one contender at middleweight in Strikeforce, and it gets me excited for the fight. Fact is, if you come from a belt, I don't take it lightly. I'm gonna want to punish you. It's time for me to make a statement. You want to come from a belt, and it's not gonna go that easily for you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Again, *1 for questions. Our next question is from Franklin McNeil of ESPN.
My first question is for Tyron. Tyron, you mentioned earlier that you try to find weaknesses in your opponent and try to exploit them. Without being specific, are there things in Nate's game that you think you can take advantage of?
Oh, definitely. There's always things in Nate's game or any other opponent's game that you see. Just because you find an opening doesn't mean that a person has a leaking gap. Me finding an opening might just be a position where he doesn't look as comfortable, or he feels a little bit more comfortable in a different position. So for me, it's obviously people do things. They put pressure on where they feel comfortable at, and they put themselves in position without just completely saying, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But I think people put themselves in positions they're comfortable at. And if you put them in positions they're not comfortable at, you have a better success rate, and that's, what I'm looking to do.
And also, it was mentioned that obviously Nate is an accomplished fighter, and probably the most notable name fighter that you will have faced at this point in your career. But every fighter at some point has to fight a guy who is regarded as the best fighter he's gone against. Do you believe the timing of this fight is right for you?
Well, the timing of this fight is perfect for me. I've been asking for these guys, and just being a young, spunky guy that's, trying to bite off the top guy's head, and one Daly and one Diaz and one. Sometimes what's our will is not God's will, and I feel like, for me it was a time where my faith was tested, and that produces patience. And my patience made me a stronger fighter and a wiser fighter. And I think that this time around, it is time, and I'm ready for it. I'm mentally going to be able to take what happens after winning this belt and after being champion and, all those things at the time I might not have been ready for. So I think it was just a maturity thing for me, just being comfortable in myself, comfortable in my skills, and just really believing But a lot of people believe in me. A lot of coaches, a lot of training partners, a lot of people that just have an eye for seeing talent believe in me. But at the end of the day, I'm the one in the cage, and I got to believe in myself more than others are believing in me, and that's what this whole camp has been about.
And my next question is for Nate. Nate, when you step into the cage, you will have been off for more than a year yourself, and I want to know how has your time off been, and do you think or why won't cage rust be a factor for you?
Well, first of all, I have like around 50 fights, and I'm in the gym every day. I've been, as I said before, training for other fights that were supposed to happen that fell through. So I've been through camps. I've been training with the best guys, top guys from all over the world, and I'm excited for this fight. And it's for me, it's a good thing. And when I fight with emotion, I do better than without emotion. I feel like I go in there, and my goal is to beat the hell out of my opponents, and that's what I'm going to do July 14th.
Well, let's talk about those emotions. What are the emotions that you're feeling heading into this fight?
Excitement, and I can't wait to get back in there. I want to show off my skills. I have new skills, and I got some old skills that I'm going to bring back, and just excitement.
Okay, when you hear an opponent say that they see something in your game that they may be able to take advantage of, how do you respond to that?
I don't listen to that, man. There's it's not about my opponent. This fight's about me and what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna win the belt, and that's it.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
And our next question comes from Heidi Fang of the MMA Fight Corner.
Hello. My first question is for Tyron. You haven't lost in 10 fights. What kind of confidence does that give you going into fight for the title?
I really try not to focus on that. One thing my college coach told me, as an amateur wrestler, is don't focus on not losing. Focus on each fight individually. And I've been able to, keep that out of the back of my mind, keep the the undefeated record out of the back of my mind. In each fight I take it as I'm going out there to win. I'm fighting to win, and I'm not fighting not to lose. When you fight not to lose, you can see that it's a lot different. And, my goal is to fight to win. Fight as if I don't have a care in the world. Just relax and just go on autopilot. Everything that you drilled, all the techniques that you've learned, just really fight that way. And that's the kind of confidence I go in there with. That I'm 0-0 right now. So when I go in there and fight this kid, this is the toughest guy I've been faced with. And as many warriors, that came before, they've been faced with tough opponents, and they put them away. And I think that's my job, is to go out there and do that each time and make it a new challenge each time, and not really just think about everything in the past.
Great, thanks. And my next question is for Luke. Do you feel like in your second title defense that you have any added pressure this time around?
Maybe if you guys want to see it that way, I'd just be another opponent, a tough opponent. Tim poses a lot of problems, and so I'm just focused on what he brings to the table. I want to keep this fight exciting. I want to keep a high-paced fight. I don't want him to be able to slow it down with his wrestling. So I think that's a huge avenue for him. And, I hope he comes with a good game plan. I'm not the biggest fan of Greg Jackson game plan, so I just hope he comes out and fights me in the middle, and fights me everywhere. It's mixed martial arts. I quit wrestling for a reason. I want to fight, and I'm looking for a fight.
Great, thank you.
Once again, it's *1 if you'd like to ask a question. And our next question comes from David Comer of WrestlingOnline.com.
Well, I'll start with you, Tim. First, thank you for your service. And I know you've expressed interest in the past about returning to active duty. Is that something you're still weighs on the back of your mind?
Yeah, that's definitely something I am always being tempted to do. I got a lot of friends right now that are in Africa that are spending a lot of time in Mexico, that are down in South America. The wars are kind of slowing down in Iraq and Afghanistan. But with that said, one of my very good friends just lost one of his schoolmates from West Point in Afghanistan last week. So it's kind of a forgotten war, but it's slowing down. So that weighs heavily on me, wanting to go back over there. But this is what I said I was going to do, and I really need to. I have dedicated myself to this, and I got to accomplish as much as I can before I move on.
Good to hear you're focused. Best of luck, gentlemen, and see you in Portland in a couple weeks.
And there are no further questions in the queue at this time. I'll turn the conference back over to Mr. Graff.
Thank you very much. This time I'd like to turn this call back over to Scott for an announcement regarding the next Strikeforce event.
Thanks, Ryan. Just wanted to say that the rumors out there had for some time have been true, and that it is confirmed that Ronda Rousey will in fact meet former champion Sarah Kaufman for her first bantamweight title defense on August 18th, when Strikeforce goes back to the Valley View Casino Center in San Diego, California. Tickets will go on sale this Friday to the general public. We'll be releasing further information about that later this afternoon. We'll also be announcing some additional bouts as they're added this week and maybe next week. Thanks, Ryan.
And I show we now have a couple of more questions. Mike Chiappetta from the SB Nation.
Thanks for taking the question. Appreciate that. Just kind of want to follow up with Luke a little bit from the comment he made about the Greg Jackson game plan. I'm just curious. I mean, is that something you think you could possibly have an issue with in this fight? Judging from the way Tim performed in the past, or is that sort of is that comment sort of directed towards things you've seen more recently from other fighters?
I mean, I think it's kind of across the board. It's Tim's style. It's his previous fights. There's a lot of fighters that come out of the camp that, they have a smart game plan. They follow the game plan. It's not, it's not the most exciting game plan a lot of the time, but it wins them fights sometimes. So it doesn't excite me much. I'm not a big fan of his style. He yells the guys' names in the corners like, "Great job, beautiful low kick, Tim Kennedy," and this and that. And I think it tries to play into the mind of the judges a lot. And it's a form of, I think, cheating at some extent. So I'm there to fight. I'm confident in my abilities, and I'm not going to let this fight slow down. And whatever he brings to the table, it's not really going to matter because I'm going to know fight, and I'm going to play my game.
Luke, do you actually game plan your stuff, or do you just kind of go in there and kind of freelance?
I game plan my stuff. I do my homework more so than probably anybody else. I just, it takes a long time to build instincts, and I'm in my training camp building instincts. So when in the fight, I don't even have to think about what I'm going to do in there. I have a backup game plan. I have A, B, C, all those game plans. So whatever he does, I'm going to instinctively react, and I've already planted that in my head of what I'm going to do on every occasion. So I definitely do my work, and I come in there and I just try to let my instincts take over, and from all the homework and all the work I put in the gym over training camp.
Thanks, Luke. And for Tim, I just wanted to get your reaction to his comments about your game plan and Team Greg Jackson game plans as well.
Fortunately, I think for the fans, this fight has two guys that are really well-rounded. I think Luke's a good wrestler. He's a good jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's a good kickboxer. It's not one that, like I'm fighting a one-dimensional fighter. This is a fight that has to take place on a whole bunch of different aspects of MMA, and it's just going to be, from start to finish, a great fight. And I don't think that you can prepare one single way for this fight. And I think that there's areas that I have to push Luke in, and some areas that he's very dangerous that I should avoid. And that's how I'm gonna show up to fight.
Okay. You kind of sidestepped my question a little bit, but if you could even just more directly kind of address, there has been criticism of Greg Jackson fighters, obviously, in the past with Carlos Condit, and more recently with the Clay Guida thing. I mean, judging from that aside, can you kind of talk about that, and just when people criticize Greg Jackson game plans, is that fair? Because obviously there's a lot of exciting fighters there as well.
I think it's absolute toilet. It's unfounded criticism. It doesn't make any sense. That same night when people were harassing Clay Guida for his performance we had the knockout of the night with Cub Swanson going out there doing some insanity in the cage to finish one of the best kickboxers in that division. And but did anybody mention what a great performance Cub Swanson had and how fantastic that finish was? And hey, congratulations, Greg Jackson, for having the knockout of the night. No, they're like, oh, Clay was running. Well, Greg hits really hard and he's a really great wrestler. I think that Clay had nearly the perfect game plan for that fight. It wasn't flawlessly executed. He should have done more sticking than he did moving. But he had the right idea, and it was an extremely close fight. And Nick Diaz and Carlos Condit. I'm a Nick Diaz fan, and if I was going to fight Nick Diaz, that's how I'd fight him, is the way that Carlos did. So. I think the criticism is completely unfounded. I think Greg is a fantastic coach. We have more finishes, more knockouts, more submissions, than any other camp out there. We have more champions. So it's asinine, and I think it's just people lashing out at somebody who's very talented at coaching fighters.
Okay, thank you for your insights, guys. Appreciate it.
Our next question comes from Stephen Morocco of MMAJunkie.com.
Hey, the question is for Nate. I was wondering if I could get you to weigh in on this game planning controversy and the Greg Jackson controversy. Back at UFC 122, after your fight with Yushin Okami, your name was brought up, in relation to Greg Jackson, and Dana basically blamed Greg Jackson for your performance against Yushin. And obviously it's come back around again. I'm wondering how you feel about the criticism that's sort of come around again, and what your take on it is.
First of all, you can't blame Greg for any of this stuff. Like he doesn't come up with a game plan and thinking, oh, we should do this because it would be real boring. He comes up with spots where you can neutralize your opponent's strengths and capitalize on his weaknesses, just like any other coach would do. He just happens to be very good at it, and I think it's ridiculous these guys blaming a coach for game plan. For fights turning out boring. The fighter has to take the criticism there, and because your job is to go in and fight, and I actually haven't been working with Greg for this camp, but it's nothing against him. It's just that, I have my coaches here in Denver, and I felt like I had exactly what I needed for this camp. But Greg's an excellent coach, and, I don't think he should deserve the criticism he gets.
Do you take that philosophy of Greg's about, neutralizing strengths and maximizing weaknesses? Do you take that into your fight preparation?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course, that's what you do. That's exactly what you have to do. I don't know anyone who doesn't do that.
But do you attribute it to Greg's, your time with Greg, or is it just something that is it just his approach maybe that you sort of got a good taste of when you were working with him?
I mean, some of his approach, yeah, I guess. But I think that's a pretty general thing to do for a coach or for a fighter, is to come up with a game plan where you attack their weaknesses and you're able to defend against their strengths.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Again, it's *1 if you'd like to ask a question. And our next question comes from Ryan Smith of MMA Meltdown. Mr. Smith, please check your mute function. And there are no further questions at this time.
Thank you very much. But thank everybody for joining the call today. Again, Strikeforce Rockhold versus Kennedy takes place live on Showtime at 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific with a tape delay on the West Coast on Saturday, July 14th. Thank you for attending the call today.
This concludes today's presentation. Thank you for your participation.